Welcome to Betting with Benny, sponsored by FTN Bets. We're here to take our first look at the Week 13 NFL lines. I did want to make sure everybody understands this is a crazy week with everything that's been going on with COVID. So if you're looking to get your money down early, like I usually am, this might be a week where you go a little bit softer than you normally do. Maybe half unit bets instead of full unit bets to start everything off. Because if last week was any indication, we may have a lot of news coming down that could change some of these games drastically. I mean, just look at what happened in the New Orleans game there. We still don't even know now. I mean, I'm doing this video Sunday night. We still don't even really know if that Pittsburgh and Baltimore game that was supposed to be played last Thursday is going to be played. So just tread lightly with what you're doing right now because there is a lot of things going on in the NFL. And I don't want anybody to get caught with their pants down and be on the wrong side of some bad news that really we had no way to know about.
The first game we're going to talk about is the Cincinnati Bengals against the Miami Dolphins. Cincinnati is 2-8-1 on the season, but they are 7-4 against the spread, 6-5 to the over. They're coming off a 19-17 loss to the New York Giants with Brandon Allen taking over as quarterback after Joe Burrow was injured in the last game. Miami is 7-4, 8-3 against the spread on the season, 4-7 to the over, and they are coming off a win against the New York Jets, 20-3 here. So looking at this number, I have this number as Miami favored by about 6.5 to 7 points. As you can see, this is a much bigger number than what I have here. It's just way too many points in my opinion. So to me, the side of this game you want to be on would be the Bengals taking the plus 11 or the plus 10.5. Do I have any faith in the Bengals? No, I really don't. I just watched the Miami defense shut down the New York Jets, a very bad offense, but an offense that I think at this point with the pieces they have is better than the offense that the Cincinnati Bengals have. So I'm not going to have a bet on this game, even though my number is pushing me in favor of the Bengals here. I just don't have any faith in the Bengals to actually put any money on it. So I'm staying away from this. The next game we're going to talk about here, Cleveland Browns taking on the Tennessee Titans. The Browns are actually 8-3 on the year, but just 4-7 against the spread. 6-5 to the over, though. They are coming off a win against Jacksonville, 27-25. The Browns have actually won 4 of their last 5 games, so they've been on a roll lately, but this is one of the tougher opponents that they face. They have been beaten up on some bad teams lately, which is why that record's a little bit inflated. On the other side of this game, we got Tennessee Titans, also 8-3, 5-6 against the spread, and have done it against much better opponents. They are 8-2-1 to the over and are coming off a win against Indianapolis, 45-26 last week. A very good win against a very good Indianapolis team, where they basically just rolled them. They ran all over them. Derrick Henry, huge day, about 170 yards rushing and 3 more touchdowns here. Interesting, when I run my numbers on this game, I actually get Tennessee minus 3.5 at home here. So you look at the number on FanDuel, minus 4.5. The number on DraftKings is minus 4. It's not enough to put me on the Tennessee side. On the Cleveland side of this game, but I'm also not going to be taking Tennessee, figuring that it's already a little bit inflated there, both the spread and the money line on the Titans. Next game we're going to talk about Indianapolis Colts against the Houston Texans. Colts are 7-4, 6-5 against the spread, 7-4 to the over, and are coming off a beatdown at the hands of the Tennessee Titans, 45-26. We just talked about in the last game there. Much softer opponent for them here with Houston. Houston just 4-7 on the season, 4-7 against the spread, 6-5 to the over. They are coming off a win themselves against Detroit, 41-25 on Thanksgiving, a game where they put up a lot of points, also gave up a lot of points, had their defense help out with some touchdowns as well. When I run my numbers on this game, I'm getting a number of, I actually get Indianapolis favored by about 4.5, but you do have to factor in that Houston is getting a little bit of extra rest, having played on Thanksgiving, so they got a couple more days to rest here coming into this game. Probably brings it down to about Indianapolis minus 3.5 for me. So it is kind of interesting. We're able to get the hook on our side when my numbers think that the hook should actually be on the other side of this game with Indianapolis. The hook is actually something that we're getting, meaning that if 3 is the final score of this game and we take the Colts side of it, we can pull out a win here. It is something that's interesting to me. Again, I don't know if I really want to take a road team against a team in Houston that does have a high-powered offense. The Colts defense is one of the best in the league, although after watching them last week, I'm a little bit worried about that. The games that the Colts have lost, they've actually lost to teams that have been able to run the ball, with the exception really of Jacksonville in that first game. they've lost to some teams that have been able to run the ball on them. They tend to beat teams that don't have a very good running game. And Houston's running game is pretty much suspect. They're much better through the air, and that's actually where the Colts have been pretty solid this year. So I do like the Indianapolis side of this game, but I don't have a bet on it at this point. The next game we can talk about here, Jacksonville Jaguars against the Minnesota Vikings. Jacksonville 1-10 on the season, but 5-6 against the spread, 6-5 to the over. Coming off a loss against Cleveland, 27-25, but again, they did cover in that game. They're on their, I guess it's their third quarterback of the year after starting with Gardner Minshew, and then moving on to Jake Luton for a little while. They're now on to Mike Lennon, who had a pretty decent game overall in that loss that they had the other day to Cleveland. On the other side of this game, Minnesota 5-6, 6-5 against the spread, 8-3 to the over. They pulled off a victory against, I shouldn't even say pulled off a victory. They basically tried to give away a victory to Carolina with a couple of, fumbles that turned into 6 points for Carolina right at the beginning of the third quarter. Somehow they managed to come all the way back and win that game 28-27, though. So we do have to give them credit for that. Remember, there was no Adam Thielen in that game either. Thielen did not play in that game. He may or may not be back this week. We don't really know how that's going to work out. Dalvin Cook did also get banged up in that game as well. So we definitely got to check the status of those two guys before we go ahead and take this number. Overall, though, this number is basically exactly what I have here. I have Minnesota on a neutral field being favored by a little bit over 8 points. And then when you factor in the home field advantage, I get about 9.5 here. On FanDuel, it's only 8.5, so maybe there's a little bit of value if you want to go on that side. But again, you're kind of in the dead man's numbers right there, 9.5, 8.5. You're above 7, you're below 10. There's really not much difference in moving that point right there. DraftKings is right on with my number here. I'm right on market with that at -9.5. So again, I'm a little worried about the Vikings. I want to make sure those guys are playing this week before I do anything. And even if I was going to do anything, my number is pretty much the same number that's being offered out there. So don't really have any value in this game. Next game we can talk about here, the New Orleans Saints against the Atlanta Falcons. The New Orleans Saints are 9-2, 6-5 against the spread, 7-4 to the over, although all 4 of those under games they've had have been the last 4 games that they've played, so they are trending in that direction. They are coming off a beatdown of the quarterbackless Denver Broncos, 31-3 in that game over the weekend. I don't really think we learned much about the Saints in that game. I think what we learned, the Saints defense is pretty solid, but they're solid against a 5th string quarterback who's an emergent, or basically a backup wide receiver who's playing 5th string emergency quarterback here. So again, it's not like they're moving up or down anywhere in my power rankings. I think they are what we thought they were. The other side of this game is a little more interesting here. Atlanta is 4-7, 5-6 against the spread, 5-6 to the over, and they are coming off a very impressive victory. They just absolutely dominated the Las Vegas Raiders from start to finish in that last game, winning 43-6, which is something I don't think very many people thought was going to happen. Atlanta has done this before, though. Atlanta can look like world beaters one game and then come back the next game and look absolutely horrendous. So very tough team to kind of nail down there when you're looking through everything. So last week when we talked about the Saints game, I told you guys that my number was way bigger than the number being offered. They had, I think it was the Saints were -5.5 to start with. My number was -8.5. It eventually moved well beyond my favor, but I'm not going to take too much out of that because that Denver game would have moved a bunch of points anyway once all the quarterbacks were ruled out one way or another. So I still think that I am higher than the market on the Saints, which means that I'm still going to be willing to bet on the Saints here. My number in this game is actually New Orleans -7. So I am way above where the market is. I actually have New Orleans about 8.5 points better on a neutral field. And that is including with Taysom Hill at quarterback with the downgrade that I gave them from not having Drew Brees at quarterback there. So I think I have at least 3.5 points of value in this game. I like the number on FanDuel. It's -3.5 at -102. So you're getting reduced juice there. You're paying even less than you need to. You only have to lay $102 to win 100 there, as opposed to on DraftKings where all the lines are pretty much -110. You got to lay 110 to win 100. So you're getting a little bit of a discount on that number on the FanDuel side of it at -3.5, -102. So that's the number that I'm most interested in. Also, if you're looking to pull off some parlays here, parlaying the Saints on FanDuel at -162 is going to give you a lot more bang for your buck than trying to parlay the Saints over on DraftKings at -200. The next game we can talk about, the Los Angeles Rams going up against the Arizona Cardinals in this one. Two teams coming off of close losses in Week 12. The Rams are 7-4, 6-5 against the spread, but just 3-8 to the over. A very good defense, and the offense has been slowing it down and concentrating on the run more than I think people give them credit for this year. And that's how you wind up 3-8 to the over when the perception of your team and the reality of your team are a little bit different. Like I said, they're coming off a loss, losing 23-20 to San Francisco last week in a very close game. Not something that you can really be disappointed about. I know San Francisco doesn't have their whole team, but it's a very well-coached team right there. They played them very well throughout the game. 23-20, they lost at home to them. It's a loss, but it's not a bad loss there. So you don't really you don't really think anything bad of the Rams for that game. The other side of this game, we have the Arizona Cardinals. 6-5 is their record, 4-7 against the spread. So a team that's been a little bit overrated by the sports books this year. 3-7-1 to the over. Also overrated is the fact that they're a high-scoring, high-powered offense. Not that they aren't high-scoring or high-powered, but they're not as high-scoring and high-powered as I think that the books are giving them credit for being. That's why we see them 3-7-1 to the over. They lost that game to New England 20-17. Again, not a great loss for them, losing to New England. New England is pretty much a middle-of-the-road team. But I think right now, I think the way to look at the Cardinals is as a middle-of-the-road team, pretty much as well, with the Rams being, a little bit better than them in this case. So when we look at the numbers for this game here, I actually have the Rams being favored by 1.5, which is the exact same number that DraftKings has. FanDuel has it at a little higher, and it's actually even juiced up a little bit, which leads me to believe that FanDuel actually thinks this number is more likely to get to 3 than it is to drop down here a little bit, which is surprising to see. DraftKings obviously right on at 1.5. I mean, at 1.5 for my number, I don't really have value in any of these numbers here on either side. I do think the Rams win this game, but my number is pretty much right on, and I'm not really willing to put any money on top of this. So that brings us to the last game that we're going to talk about here, which is the New England Patriots taking on the Los Angeles Chargers. This is a game that I have a lot of interest in, to be honest with you. The Patriots are 5-6, 5-6 against the spread, 4-7 to the over. Although the last 3 games they have played to the under. They're coming off a win against Arizona, as we just talked about, 20-17, and they have won 3 of their last 4 games. So the Patriots are looking better. Remember, they had a bunch of COVID issues, especially to Cam Newton. It wasn't looking good for them in the middle of the season, but it does look like they've been able to right the ship recently. On the other side of this game, we have the Los Angeles Chargers, who are 3-8, 5-6 against the spread. The last 5 games, they've lost all 5 of them against the spread. So just keep that in mind here. This is a team that the sports books are a lot higher on than they probably should be. Mostly, I think, because the offense under Justin Herbert has been able to put up some points. They're 7-4 to the over. They did go under last game against Buffalo, but that snapped a streak of 7 straight games that they had with Herbert as quarterback where they wound up going over. So this is a team that has been able to put up points, but they've also been giving up more points than people realize here. The reason why I said this game is interesting, I have New England as a team that's about a field goal better on a neutral field, which means that my number for New England with the Chargers being at home here would still be about 1.5. You look at both of these numbers, and both of these numbers have the Chargers favored in this game, which I think is wrong. I think the Patriots should wind up being favored in this game. The number I like the most is on FanDuel. If I have the Patriots favored by 1.5, and the number I'm getting on FanDuel for the money line is plus 106, that means I'm getting plus money on something that I think is better than a coin flip here. Now, again, I probably only have I think this game is pretty much a little bit more than a coin flip. I probably only have the Patriots winning it 52 or 53% of the time, but 52 or 53% of the time is more than a 50-50 proposition. A 50-50 proposition should be paying me, plus 100 even money. The Patriots at minus 103 on DraftKings is probably about where they should be. I would think it would be like a money line of like minus 110 or under, somewhere around there. So the Patriots at plus 106 on FanDuel is providing a little bit of value and is probably one of my favorite bets of the day. So I will be taking the Patriots money line, even with them being on the road here. Anybody who has a problem with this bet, just think about it this way. You're betting on Bill Belichick against Anthony Lynn. That alone is worth a point or two right there for me. So if I'm getting plus money on the much better coach in this situation, I'm going to have some interest in that. There are a couple other games that we didn't talk about here. The Sunday night football game is Denver and Kansas City. Kansas City is favored by 13.5 in that game, which is about on where my number is. I didn't see the number up on DraftKings yet, so I didn't put it down. I only want to talk about numbers that both DraftKings and FanDuel have a number up for. Another game that DraftKings didn't have a number up for was the New York Giants game. Daniel Jones got hurt at the end of that last game, so we don't know how that's going to play out. So I didn't want to talk about that game. Right now, FanDuel has a number up of about 8.5 over there, and that would be right around the value that I have for Seattle. With Daniel Jones, I would actually have Seattle favored by about 9. Without Daniel Jones, it's more like 11 or 11.5. So if you find out that Daniel Jones is going to be out for that game, I do think it's going to wind up moving even a little more in Seattle's favor. So if you can still get that 8.5 that they have on FanDuel, I don't think that's crazy. Chicago and Green Bay are both playing their Sunday night football game as I do this video right now. So I don't have a bet on either one of them for next week. Then the Las Vegas Raiders and the New York Jets did not have a lineup, so I don't have a bet on them. We don't know what's going to happen with the Ravens game with all those guys having COVID, so I don't have any numbers on that game. Then they play the Pittsburgh Steelers supposedly on Tuesday night. We'll see how all that works out. But because of that, I don't have a number on the Pittsburgh Steelers or the Washington Redskins game. So make sure you guys get over to FTN Bets. Those things will be up as they come out during the week. This has been Benny Ricciardi with another episode of Betting with Benny from FTN Bets on the FTN Network.